Welcome to Connected Conversations. I am Elena Petrova, founder and CEO of Adastra Inc. Tune in as we share inspiring stories, connect with local heroes, and discover solutions that uplift us.
One of the biggest challenges that we deal with is our history. And every community has their own unique history. And what I found is for law enforcement, for public safety, we don't do a good enough job of acknowledging and recognizing that history and understanding how the history impacts present day.
I would like to pull us to our today time frame
Okay.
because you are working a lot with different organizations right now. Probably some of them are law enforcement, probably some of them not. So you probably have seen so many different communities from the cultural standpoint, from the social standpoint. Do you see what is there any common ground when we have challenges that maybe you can highlight three challenges that you have seen through working with different community and community leaders?
So,
Is trust one of them?
oh, absolutely, trust is one of them. So, I've worked in communities from the East Coast to the West Coast, and the the beauty of it is it doesn't matter where you are. Like the challenges are the same.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest challenges that we deal with is our history, and every community has their own unique history. And what I found is for law enforcement, for public safety, we don't do a good enough job of acknowledging and recognizing that history and understanding how the history impacts present day. When we hire new officers into the organization, are we educating them on what the history is of the community? Or certain parts of the community that have whatever in their history, a lot of that stuff still shows up present day as to why a community may not trust law enforcement. I remember I was in one community, and there had been a young girl had been killed. She had been murdered, and she was like a young girl. Like, I don't even think she was a teenager yet. And her case went unsolved. So her killer was never brought to justice. And the community, the area that she was from, like, they never forgave law enforcement for it because they didn't think it was a little black girl, and they didn't think that the police department did everything that they could have done for her in her case.
Mm-hmm.
There are things like that exist in communities all throughout the country that contributes to why certain communities or certain people have the outlook that they have. And so that's something that, as I work across the country with different agencies and community groups and things, that we talk a lot about is what are we doing to make sure that officers that are coming on to like that, we are setting them up for success
Mm-hmm.
in the best way possible. And so educating them on the community, especially if they're not from there, and they haven't been exposed to a lot of the things that have happened or going on in that community. How do we educate them on the front end? The second part is, what is the agency's accountability system, and does the community have confidence in the accountability system? Some of the work that I'm doing now, I'm on the monitor team for Louisville, Kentucky. So the summer of 2020, we had George Floyd was killed. Breonna Taylor was killed in Louisville, Kentucky. And as a result of the investigation into Louisville, they have a consent decree that has been put in place. And I'm on the monitor team that will be overseeing their consent decree implementation. So all of their reform work. And in doing that work, one of the things that we regularly see that comes from those investigations is it talks about the agency or the organization having a flawed accountability system. And it talks about, they make it too hard on community members to bring complaints forward against officers or employees of the department, or when those complaints come in, they don't do a good job of reviewing all of them to look and see if there's any misconduct or any of those things. And so that is something that really drives what the trust is going to be in the community. And also, like, how do we get creative in what that looks like? One thing that I was extremely proud of what we implemented in Ferguson was a mediation program that was tied to our complaint process. Because what we found, the typical complaint, if I pulled you over and you didn't like something that I did, or you felt as though I was rude and discourteous during the pullover, and let's say you call the police department and say, hey, Officer Armstrong pulled me over and he was rude to me, I want to file a complaint. So they would take your complaint, they would give you a complaint number and tell you that somebody will be in contact with you. So let's say they go back and they pull my body camera footage and they listen to what, our conversation, and I didn't say, I didn't call you any names and I didn't say anything overtly rude or anything. So there's really nothing that stands out that they can pinpoint that, okay, Armstrong, you should not have said this. I didn't say anything that triggered that. And so at the end, you would get an email or a letter in the mail that would say, Lena, we got your complaint, we investigated it, and we did not find any evidence to support your complaint, so this complaint is not sustained, or this complaint is unfounded. Thank you for bringing this information to our attention. How does that sound? How do you think you would feel at the end of that? You're going to feel as though that you weren't heard or that they didn't care about your complaint because you received that communication that we didn't find anything wrong with this. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people, how they're left feeling when that happens is, I wasted my time by even bringing this complaint to them, because the police always take up for the police, or they always take the side of their officers, and they don't care what community members have to say. And that's normally, what we get. So we created this mediation program where, all right, when you call to make that complaint against me, we can ask you, hey, would you be open to sitting down with a neutral mediator? So somebody that does not work for the police department or even for our government, but somebody that we contract with. Would you be willing to sit down with a neutral mediator with the officer to talk about why you felt how you felt, and what did you feel was discourteous and rude from this exchange? And so if you agree to do it, then we go to the officer. Hey, the person that you pulled over wants to file a complaint against you, but she is open to sitting down for mediation. Would you be open to sitting down to mediate this? And if I say yes, then the two of us come together, we meet with this neutral mediator, and they mediate our discussion where you're able to share directly with me what I did or what you received from me that made you feel how you felt, that I was discourteous, I was rude, or what have you. I'm able to share, I'm sorry, I apologize if it came across that way. That wasn't my intention. I was just doing this, or this is how I always do it, or what have you. But you're able to have a dialogue with that. And the mediator does their mediation thing. And it's not to get to an end result that you all agree on something at the end. It's just creating a space for both of you all to share with one another. And then you leave that encounter. What we found, that's a much better takeaway from the person who has the negative impact on them to begin with. Because a lot of times we want to be heard. We want to be heard, whether it's
Right.
venting or whatever the case may be, but people want to be heard, and they want to feel as though that their thoughts and feelings on something have been heard. And so, we created that program where it was an option, because just sending somebody a piece of paper saying, hey, we looked into this and your thoughts and feelings on this were not validated. Now I have a community member that's out in the community that has less trust in us, or they may feel some type of way about us. And so there are different things that we could do from the accountability stance that can build trust and build people's confidence, where, I can't guarantee that there's not going to be an officer that's going to be rude to somebody, or an officer that's going to do something that they shouldn't do, or any of those things. Like, I can't guarantee that. What I can guarantee is anything that happens that is brought to our attention, the community can know that we're going to follow our policies, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we handle it appropriately. And whatever the outcome is, it's going to be something that is fair and appropriate. And even if that's me coming to tell a community member, all right, we have looked into this and the officer didn't do anything wrong. Like, that is a part of the process as well. And we have to be able to stand up in front of people and say that when it's the right thing to say, no different than when I have to stand up and say, yeah, we messed up and we should not have done this. And all right, we're going to look and see, how we can prevent this from happening in the future. Like, all of that goes into it. And so having an accountability system, not that people are going to always get the outcome that they want to see, because that's not what it's designed to do. But I want people to have the confidence in it, that the outcome that comes from it, knowing that we have gone through as critical a process as we could possibly go through internally, and being willing to share and for people to see all of that stuff as much as they can see legally, I should say, to where they would have the confidence down the road to bring something else to our attention. And how you design that, and how you communicate, and what are touch points, what do they feel like with people, when we call them, when we talk to them, how we ask the questions, like all of those things contribute to how somebody feels and how they feel taken care of and treated in a space. Like, all of that goes to the amount of confidence that community members have in how we do something. And that's something across the board. When we see problematic agencies, we normally see that their accountability system is not functioning at optimal level.
As we say, and I talk to my team often, it's not that we're not going to have problems or we're not going to have complaints. It's how we handle it. And very often we can turn a problem or complaint into positive impact. Back to you on this, because that would be an opportunity for us to establish that connection. And I do agree, and again, you talk about this in the book, that it's not about not having accountability. It's bringing this accountability through connection and again communication. You also talk about that it works both ways. It's not just the police officers that should be communicated in a respectful way, the community members. Because when you were talking about the case when you helped the young man to avoid jail, the first thing that you said, had he talked to you in a disrespectful way, your brain wouldn't go that direction. But the fact that he was respectful, he was communicating to you, it worked.
Absolutely.
And then there was another story that you were sharing. It was not you, it was a different police officer who stopped a woman. Oh, no. He stopped a man who was speeding on the way to his kids' sport event. And the fact that they had that connection and they talked to each other, the person still got his ticket. But the connection and the community happened. And then, of course, he is going to go and talk to his neighbors, saying, hey, got stopped by this police officer, had such a pleasant conversation, because it wasn't about speeding again.
Correct.
And that happened to me several times here in DC when I was driving my daughter to school, got stopped by police, explained that between the meetings, trying to drop my kid, he was very understanding. We had a conversation. He gave me warning. I got back. But then, trust me, that was all over social media because I had the pleasant experience and I wanted to communicate that once you have this communication and connection on both sides, that's how it works.
Yeah. In Malcolm Gladwell, in one of his books, I forget which book it was in, he shares a story about, it wasn't a survey, but I forget what they called it, but they did some research on doctors that get sued for malpractice. And what the research showed was that the doctors who, in essence, made a mistake but did not get sued by the person, on average, they spend an extra 3 minutes with their patient. And so what it talked about was what made all the difference in the world. The mistake that they made wasn't the thing that the person was so up in arm about when they decided, when they would make the decision if they wanted to sue the doctor or not. The doctors that actually took more time with the patients, established more of a connection with the patients, those patients were less likely and less willing, even if they needed to sue. So you have the doctor that does the surgery, you have the anesthesiologist, you have this prep person, you have all these different people. And in one of the cases they were talking about, well, to sue this person, you got to sue all 4 people, included their primary doctor. And it was like, no, if I have to sue my primary doctor, then I don't want to sue anybody. I'm not going to do it because I my doctor cares about me. And they had that care off of 3 minutes. Wow. And so I would share that, we deal with people often at their worst. Like when we are engaging with somebody, it's not because they're having a good day. Whether we initiated them not having a good day or we're responding to them already not having a good day. Mm-hmm. And I would share that story a lot of times with my officers, just helping them try to understand, if we take the time to engage with people, it's not a lot of bad things that can happen as a result of that. It's normally only positive things that can come from that if we are genuine in how we are interacting with them. 3 minutes, that's what made the difference in the doctors who got sued versus the doctors who didn't get sued. They spend an extra 3 minutes with those patients. And then when you think about it, just think about, going to the doctor's office and they have you in that room and, you can hear the doctor hitting the rooms all around. And then when they come in, if they're in and out real quick and they get, mm-hmm. they tap your knees like, okay, you look good. And then they walk right out. Versus one that comes in and sits down and actually has somewhat of a little bit of a conversation with you. Like the touch points that we have just throughout daily life mm-hmm. contributes the most to how we feel connected in our communities and in the people that we interact with daily. And for law enforcement, we need that more than anybody else.
Yes.
We need that more than anybody else. And that's why it was so important to me. That's why it was so important for me to model that. Anybody in the community wanted to meet with me or wanted to see me, I made it happen. Didn't matter if they were a fan of law enforcement, if they hated law enforcement, if they were willing to sit down and have a conversation or any kind of interaction with me, I was going to make it happen because I owed that to them. And what I wanted to do in those spaces was just try to find something that we could connect on. Because if we could connect on something, then we can build from there. And I've had to work with a lot of people who just really, really had a complicated history or outlook on police officers or the policing profession as a whole. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is coming into an agency, and I'm meeting with community members that just did not like our department at all, and were very, very skeptical and critical of the department from some of the experiences that they had had. But I was able to take them alongside me on the journey. And all of the things that we were trying to do, I would meet with them regularly and just tell them like what we had going on and what we were doing. And if I had an opportunity for them to come help us with something, hey, I need a community member to be an assessor for this process. I need, a community member to help us with this. And just getting them involved so they could get a peek behind the curtain that average citizens, don't get if they're not engaged with us in any kind of way. That started to tear down some of the barrier that they had built up because we were being inclusive. I don't mind how critical you are of us because I know what I'm trying to build over here, and we don't have anything to hide. Now, doesn't mean we're going to be perfect, but I want you to see what goes on in here because my outlook on it is if I can bring somebody along on the journey with us, mm-hmm. and they see what it is that I'm trying to do in this organization that I lead, and you see what these men and women do day in and day out for their community and service of the community, like you can hate us at the beginning, but I don't think there's any way that we go through that process. If you actually show up and engage, I don't think there's any way we go through that process where your outlook on us doesn't improve drastically. And that's what I had happen, where somebody who, when I first met them, told me that they hated the police. They didn't care too much for me coming in as the new chief. And they were overly critical that I would make any progress or I would do any good in the agency. Fast forward of 3 years total, over 3 years of bringing them alongside us on the journey so they could see what we were doing and what we were trying to achieve. When I announced my retirement, when the announcement went out to the media, this was one of the first people that texted me. And the text said, "You're leaving. Who I got to fight?"
Wow.
And so I responded, I said, "You don't have to fight anybody." I said, "Yes, I'm retiring. It's time for me to move on to the next chapter in my professional life." Then the follow-up message said, is this going to hurt or damage all of the progress we've made in the department? And the message said that we've made collectively. But the fact of the matter is everything that I did in the department was my decision. Like, this group, like they didn't give me any demands or say, hey, we want to see this, we want to see that. They just, when I offered to bring them along on the journey, they accepted that offer and they came on the journey with me. So they got to see what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And they got to participate in things that were appropriate for them to participate in. And so all of the changes and all the progress, all the success, it became our progress. It became our changes. It became our success, to where when they talked about it, is this going to push back any of the progress that we've made? I don't know. You're going to have to talk to the new chief about that, because I don't know what, he or she, what their outlook for the department is going to be when they get here. But I've showed you how to be engaged with the agency. Mm-hmm. Now it's your responsibility to continue that. It doesn't matter that I'm not the person that's in the seat anymore. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter what changes that person is going to make. What I wanted you all to take away from this is how to be engaged and how to show up. Because when you have that, it doesn't matter who is sitting in a leadership seat. You know the role that you play. You know the impact that you can have just by being engaged.
And so you're doing a lot of consulting right now. That's your next chapter. You're working with multiple organizations, which you probably can cover that. You are teaching this concept right now And you also came up with the acronym PI, which is, to me, when I heard it for the first time, I didn't know how it's spelled. I'm like, it's also about connection. But then I realized that there is a different meaning behind it, which if you could talk a little bit, what led you to this concept of PI?
Yeah, community pie is what I call it. And so for one, what I like about pie, one, it's good.
Right.
But
it brings people together.
But there's so much variety. And I don't know how many pies exist in the world, but there are thousands of different types of pie. And one thing that is important to me is diversity, because every community in this country has a diversity element to it. Now, that diversity can be different. Too often when we say the word diversity, people automatically think race. And of course, that is, the number one thing that we can see about our diversity. But when I talk about diversity, I'm really talking about diversity of thought, diversity of lived experiences, and all of those things. And so when I think about, pie, and community pie in particular, is I would always tell my staff that every single person in our community has value. That value is going to look different from person to person. And sometimes we struggle to see the value in somebody that has committed a crime, or somebody that is addicted to drugs, or somebody who, what life has dealt them, they feel as though they have to participate in whatever the ill of society or the vice may be. But even those individuals that could be at their lowest, like they still bring some value into the space. Now, we may not see it in our interactions with them. We may never know what their value is. But I need you to treat them as if they hold value. And so having that concept that you have a community just of diverse people, when I think about pie and just all of the diversity of pies that exist, and the fact that, that is something that, a lot of people can come together on. That's really what got the idea going. And then when I thought about like what drives success for me as a police chief is not inherently, what I bring to the table, but it's the partnerships that I'm able to leverage. And whether it's inside my organization or outside the organization, out in the community, how innovative are we being, or are we trying? Like, are we pushing the envelope? Are we trying to drive creativity in the space? Like, I love to be able to do something that has never been done before. Mm-hmm. And then empowerment. Like, how are we empowering people? How are we empowering the community? Because one thing that I always try to focus on, especially with the partnership component, is the police department by itself cannot keep a community safe. Like, there's zero chance of that, of a police department being able to do 100% of the work to keep a community safe. Mm-hmm. There's always more community members than there are police officers, by a lot. And so that's why we focus on community policing, because it takes a community to help keep a community safe. And so how are we empowering the community as well to take an active role and to be an active participant in helping keep them safe? So all the responsibility is not on the police department. Now, I'm responsible for leading the effort because that's my job as the police chief. But we also got to find people out in the community, and we got to help community understand like what they can contribute in those spaces. Because sometimes people just don't know. They don't know that they hold some great value that they can lend to helping the community be safe, or helping the quality of life in the community or this neighborhood or whatever the case may be. And so as we look for unique partnerships to build, that's part of what we're trying to do is help community understand what that looks like. And so when you add it all together, partnerships, innovation, and empowerment equals success. And that's how I look at it. And so I was always trying to drive just how creative can we get with the people that we're looking to partner with, and unlikely partnerships that on the surface of it may not make any sense. But when we get together and we get to brainstorming and you're driving innovation, a lot like the tech summit that we met at,
Right.
is you have people in there that's trying to drive innovation in the AI space. It's no different than the innovation that I was trying to drive in public safety between law enforcement agencies and the communities that we serve. And how do we empower people to be creative in that space, but also to be responsible in that space? Like the message that I shared to close out the thing is, all of this innovation is great. We can't forget that there's a human touch point that's going to be somewhere on this journey. We need to be thinking about that human touch point as we drive for innovation and all the creativity and technology and all of these things. So yeah, for me, Community Pie was just a way to drive engagement, and the more people that we can engage with, the more smart people that we brought to the table to help us try to solve problems in the community, and the more positive examples that community members could see of their local law enforcement, the more positive interactions that officers could have with community members or people from different parts of the community, especially if they had if the officers had some negative experiences in certain parts of the community, where they may, their outlook on it may be, everybody in that neighborhood hates us, and I hate going over there because they all hate us. Where if I can create something, a basketball game or whatever the case may be, and they have just a genuine interaction with somebody from over there, then that starts to break down some of their barriers. It's like, all right, well, maybe everybody over there doesn't hate us. And yeah, we have a complicated history over there, but we can make some inroads, and maybe we can start to improve things over there. So it really was just a way to get people together and constantly reinforce and drive that engagement is what's needed, because that's how you learn people. That's how you learn, what things you have in common or what you're connected on. I put out a kids book at one department where just the officers shared more about their personal story, just, and nothing too intrusive, but just share a little bit, what are some of your likes in your personal life, whether it's fishing or playing video games or different things. And we gave those books out to the community because I wanted young people to read about their officers, and I wanted them to see what they had alignment on. Like, oh man, I like that video game too. So wow, officer such and such plays the same video game that I play.
Yeah.
Or they like the same thing that I like. And the more that we can drive, especially when it's not a crisis at hand that we're having to navigate, that positions us so when a crisis does arise, we're better equipped to handle it. And we got more people that are willing to help us navigate it and manage it at the same time.
I love the story in your book when you talked about having a basketball play with teenagers, probably the age was, and then later on you met the same young man, teenager. I'm not sure which word to use here properly, but the look on the face, how you guys connected on the street, and you looked at each other, and he wasn't looking at you any longer as a person in uniform. The conversation that you had, it was a human connection that you had. And again, that building trust. You probably know so much now, after all the experience, out of those years of service, about healing probably within local communities and communities that you served, communities that you probably counseling right now, is there anything that you could recommend that we should keep in mind, because we are all going to be going through the process of healing?
One, yeah, I would say the number one lesson that I learned in regard to healing is you can't force it, and you can't speed it up. Like everybody has their process of healing. Everybody has their own timeline, and it really goes to a remark that you said earlier as far as meeting people where they are, is you have to meet people where they are on the healing journey, and you have to know and understand that part, that you can't speed it up even if you want to. Each individual has to manage it and go through it. Now you can create spaces where you're just trying to help and make it as comfortable for people as you can make it, but you can't speed up someone's healing process. And so in being in communities where there is healing that is taking place or needs to take place, it's how can you come from a trauma-centered approach where if you understand what caused the harm, or if you know what caused the harm, one of the best things that we can do is not recreate that harm for someone. And in law enforcement, like we're still learning how to manage and navigate that. When it comes to victims, if somebody's been victimized, and especially some of the worst things that we see, how do we not re-victimize them in the course of us trying to bring justice to them in this space? And what setting do we have them in? How are we asking the questions? Like all of those things. When I first came to the profession, like we didn't think about any of those things. Like none of that wasn't a part of.
Are we training now our police officers to do this?
Huh?
Are we training right now our police officers to do how to
Oh
communicate?
yes. Yeah. These trainings didn't exist when I came into the profession, but we're doing a lot more, where more trauma informed care, more victim centered approaches. To how we handle things, especially like victims of domestic violence, victims of sexual assault and sexual abuse, things like that, where we're trying to create a better space for them to get the help that they need, to get the resources that they need, for us to get the information that we need, to be able to hold the individuals accountable that have committed these crimes with them. But I would say, like, it is in the profession, it is still largely, it's not a natural way of going about doing the work. And that's part of what we're still learning. And, when we think about, the work that I'm doing in consulting now, like those are some of the things that, we're trying to make sure that we reinforce, of when you have somebody that has been through a traumatic event, a traumatic experience, even if you think that they could have avoided this for themselves, like it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like and that's why I say, like, some of that is still hard for us in law enforcement. And we've seen a big shift. Prostitution was a real big one for the longest time. If you were caught prostituting, like you were going to jail, like there were no additional questions, like that's all that it was. But now we know so much about human trafficking and what goes into that. We have a different line of questioning and things that go in where it's not automatic. Okay, if you're involved in prostitution, then you're automatically out here just to commit a crime or what have you. It's, were you driven to this by other means, and agencies have more resources that we can provide to individuals and different things like that, in hopes of helping them on their healing journey, and getting them to, to a place where, where they can function, how they need to function, and hopefully enjoy the positives of life and society, despite what they've been through.
What is your current life chapter? Where do you see the impact that you can make the most at the moment?
What I see right now is because the work that I do, I'm not confined to one community. You know, being a police chief, I have to pour my heart and soul into that one community that I'm the police chief for. And when I made the decision to retire, one of the things that I was looking forward to was being able to take the successes that I had in the communities that I worked in and being able to share that information and share that knowledge and share those resources globally. And so now I'm doing that. So I travel the country quite a bit, a lot of speaking engagements, keynote speaking and things. Just sharing the information. I get brought in to work with some agencies on different things around the country as well through my consulting work. But really in a place where I'm laying the foundation for what I feel can help policing just across the board in the U.S. and abroad, because I can put results on the table of how these things have worked in communities, how these things have worked in some of the most difficult environments, in the most difficult dynamics that you can experience in communities. And so I know that there is a value to it. And now I'm just trying to spread that message and spread that knowledge just all across the globe.
Your websites, if any of our listeners are interested, please visit the website. There is a lot of good information there.
Yes.
And any new projects that you're excited to take forward, maybe in 2026, 2027? What's next?
Yes, I'm really excited about the consulting work that I'm doing in Louisville, and being on that team. That is this project is a first of its kind. So this hasn't been done in the country before. How they're doing this work of reforming their agency, and to have a part in something once again that's innovative and hasn't been done before. I'm really excited about what we're going to do, and I think as we continue to build off of this, communities, because this is community centered, and we're really emphasizing what the community's role can be in reform work of their public safety. Really think that this model could be something that really catches some traction across the country, where we'll be doing more of this, around the country, and helping communities work through some of the challenges and differences that they have between law enforcement and the communities, the people in the community that are committed to seeing things change or seeing things improve. And also being educated along the way, and what that looks like and what it could look like, with the community playing a pivotal role in it. So the Louisville project is definitely at the top of my list of things that I'm excited about as we're closing out 25, going into 26. But then also, get into spaces that I haven't been to before. There's still many states that I haven't, spoken in or brought any of my trainings or speaking events to. So I'm definitely looking to expand. Then the next couple of years, I want to have, done something in all 50 states. So I still have a long way to go, because there are a lot of states that I haven't hit yet. So looking forward to continue building on that in 26.
So life continues.
Absolutely.
Life continues. So you are such a grounded person. Again, you're sitting here in front of me, watch the videos, watched you in the coffee shop downstairs. The first thing that kept jumping at me is like, you are grounded and you are so in control. Composure is there. Then you also went through all those events where you moved different parts of the country with your family. You came to the community where you were not welcomed. You got life threats. You slept a couple of hours. I was reading your book where you would come from work, you would probably spend a couple of hours with your family. You were talking that you couldn't fall asleep from 3 to 4 a.m. Got up, stayed in bed until 8, showed up back to your team, and so it continues. And that was through pandemic. That was through the protests. That's when there was a lot of looting and rioting, and yet you you were there for your team, for the family, for the community members. How do you do it? What is your source of energy, mental stability?
I would say, like, when you're in the heat of the moment, like, you don't think a lot about it. Like, I was the leader, and so it was my job to show up everywhere. I'm also the leader at home, and so it's my job to show up, for the family. And it's always my job to try to be better than I was the day before. And so, that part, like, the part of showing up was non-negotiable. Like, there is no other option there. Where the nuances come is when I show up, how impactful am I today, and am I seeing things how I need to see them? Am I funneling my decision making through the proper funnels and all of that stuff? But the showing up piece is that's always going to be there. And so for me, I would always say that's half the battle. Like, showing up is half the battle. Once you show up, then you can figure it out from there. And being the chief in a place like Ferguson, where oftentimes it felt like, the weight of the world was on my shoulders, because Ferguson is such a pivotal place in modern policing history and community history, that I was always terrified that I was going to mess up or I was going to get it wrong. When we talk about communication, I did a lot of media as the chief in Ferguson. I did a lot of national media and international media as the chief in Ferguson. And one thing that I was always worried about, and so it kept me sharp, was saying the wrong thing. Because if I say the wrong thing as the chief in Ferguson, then that could ignite riots and protests and all this other stuff. And so other people would have to pay for my mistakes or, my mess ups. And I was always terrified about that. And so it helped keep me sharp, where, I never said anything in any of my interviews or media coverage or things that, was clickbait or people could, latch on to give them the motivation to come out to hurt my officers or damage things or whatnot. But just showing up each and every day, and I got to a point where, like, my saying was just, I can't think about everything and every single challenge and just how difficult all this stuff is. My only goal is just to make it to tomorrow.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. And navigating the riots and is painful mentally and physically, like, all of that stuff was, like, that was the mindset that got me through it, was just survive the day. Just survive the day, and tomorrow brings another day. Now, I would also tell leaders that that's not the healthiest way. Like, you can't sustain that. And that was definitely one of the things for me where I knew I had to make some changes in my life, and understanding that, just things that are unhealthy for you are not sustainable. and just surviving every day is not very sustainable. But when you're in the heat of the battle and the heat of the moment, it can get you through, it can get you by. And but in knowing that that's not sustainable, as you're navigating that, you have to be thinking about how are you taking care of yourself, or what do you need to do, or what do you need to be able to take care of yourself, and make sure that the part of just surviving is as short lived as it can be, where you want to be actually living life, and that goes for your profession, your personal life, all the things, and not just surviving every day. And that was what I had to get to, or where I had to get to, is a place where I understood that just surviving every day isn't healthy. That's not healthy for my family, because my work took up so much of just all of my brain space and my mental capacity, that I didn't have much left over, for my family. And so I had to make changes and different things like that. And part of that, just being honest and candid is why I left Ferguson after a couple years to take another chief job, is because I knew I couldn't sustain what that was taking out of me every single day, and keep my family whole, and be the husband and the father that I needed to be for my family. And so that's another thing that comes with leadership, which is just understanding going into something like, what are you willing to give up, what are you willing to sacrifice, all those things, and having those things laid out on the front end, to make sure that you can keep yourself in check, because it can be intoxicating when you accomplish this big thing, or you have this big position, or you're on national TV, and like just all of these things, and people look at you and hold you in certain regard. If you don't have your values in order, that could be intoxicating, and it could be something that actually derails your success, instead of lifting you up to the success that you think you're headed towards.
And yeah, back to the values. Your daughter, who helped you to make that decision, you came home and she was saying that you do not look like you were happy.
Yes.
And then, of course, also was reading that you had to have several. You didn't first. You had conversation with your wife, and then she gave you green light, but yet you still verified it before you took your position for the
Yes.
family to move. It brings me back to, again, how true you are to your values.
And I would say some of it is self-serving. And when they offered me the Ferguson job, what you're referencing, what I talk about in the book, is I initially turned it down. And I turned it down because, although my wife was saying that she supported me taking the job and the move, I could tell that she really didn't. And her body language and just all the nonverbal communication signaled that she wasn't okay with this. And so I knew that I couldn't be successful at doing that job and going to Ferguson and all that stuff if she wasn't in a good place, because I knew the job was going to be chaotic and probably the most difficult thing that I would ever experience in life. And so I needed her to be in a good place so she could support me, because I knew that my life was going to be turned upside down. And so, yeah, like it definitely, one thing that has served me well is having, I guess, just a foundation to make decisions through, or how I process decisions, where like I'm trying to make sure that I put quality thought behind what it is that I'm doing, even if something looks like it is, the best thing and all of that stuff, but sticking to a process of how I funnel decisions, just to help me have the level of discernment that hopefully I will exercise in appropriate way. But yeah, that was a grueling process, making that decision to go, because it was going to impact us in so many ways, not just me taking a really big job, but moving and family dynamic and all of those things. But clearly it was where we were supposed to be and what I was supposed to do. And people ask me about this a lot now is, knowing what I know now and having to deal with riots again and all of that stuff. Like would I change? Would I go back and change anything? And I wouldn't. That was the journey and the path that I was supposed to travel through, and I'm appreciative of it. So yeah, I wouldn't change any of it.
Incredible. Well, thank you for leading us through all of that. I remember being stuck to the television, watching every single hour and day of development of what was happening. Who knew I would meet you in real life after that? Now, I want to emphasize again, because your life of service, your personal life of your family, and your family plays such a big role in who you are. And all of this, I keep having the same sort of like keep coming back to communication and connection, communication and connection. You just even mentioned body language of your wife when you are communicating, which means that you're so perceptive when you're communicating with people and understanding, do you need to come back to the same conversation to make sure that we're on the same page. To me, leadership, we cannot be leaders without really having that taking communication to the next level with the connection. And today, with all the technology, AI, and we are so connected, but at the same time so disconnected, because some of us are working from home remotely. Some of us so dedicated to building these digital communities. Nothing that there is something wrong with that, but the more we are doing it, the more we are getting disconnected from in person. And that's the reason why I said when I'm going to start podcast, it's going to be in person only, because I do believe in this personal connection.
Absolutely.
So the more AI is helping us to be more productive and efficient, the more time we have to do other things. And what I realize, more and more people going back to basics, community building. And we are building, I shouldn't say we are building those communities around anything. I can see we have people building communities around, because we all suffer from loneliness one way or another. Let's get community to get Sunday coffee. Let's get community here in DC, dinners with strangers, or maybe it's going to be dedicated to some political events. Children, meet-up groups, it could be anything. So building community is becoming a big thing right now. And I think the more we move in the future with the technology, the more coming back to basic human connection, human technology, outside of human technology, this in-person connection, in-person community building will become more and more relevant. So for those people who are stepping into it, and who want to bring positive impact, what would be your recommendation? Where to start?
I would say you start with why, but I'm not talking about the word why. I'm talking about the letter Y. And so the letter Y is for you. You start with you. As I said earlier, everybody has value. And what I challenge everybody on is, when you're looking to have an impact or make an impact, and when you look at the spaces that you find yourself in, are you in spaces that you feel as though you fit in? Because if you are, then I would tell you, or I would challenge you, that you're in the wrong space. You don't make much of an impact on spaces that you fit in, as opposed to finding spaces where you add value. Because you can add value into a space that you really don't fit in. And that's probably where you need to be.
Interesting.
So when you're getting into this, or you have an inkling that this is something that you want to do, focus on adding value. Focus on adding value, not fitting in. When I talk about leadership, It's easy to be the leader that is wanted because that's often the leader that is liked. I challenge leaders, don't be the leader that is wanted. Be the leader that is needed. Like, what do people need from you? What do people need from your leadership? That's what you should be giving them. That goes back to how uncomfortable are you willing to get to drive the impact and the change that you want to drive? Because it's real comfortable to find yourself in a space that you fit in. Everybody is like-minded. Everybody has the same political affiliation, all of those things. It's extremely uncomfortable to go into a space where you don't fit in at all, but you add extreme value because your voice may be the sole dissenting voice. But somebody somewhere is going to benefit from your voice being in that room. And that was what I had to learn. Like, that was me oftentimes, is I often was the only person who looked like me in a lot of the rooms that I was in. And inevitably, a topic would come up for discussion that I was uniquely positioned to speak to because I had lived experience, or I had a great connection to people who had lived experiences in that space. And I was able to be a voice for them in rooms that they had never had a voice in before. And that was the value that I added into those rooms. And once I started seeing the value that I added into the rooms, like, that's what fueled me to continue to go and help me understand that this is how I can drive change. This is how I can have an impact. And all right, I'm able to contribute this in a space where I'm just a seat at the table. But what about if I can get to the top seat, and now I have the power and authority to not just be a voice at the table, but I have, some authority where I can implement things and I can change things and I can do this and I can do that. And what if I can get, all these people inside this organization that now work for me, if I can get them to see the value in some of these things. They may not see the value in everything, but if I can get them to see the value in this right here, then they can take some ownership in this area right here. Some other people, they see value in this over here, they can take some ownership in this over here. And so for me, like, all of that starts with you as the individual. When things aren't going your way, or when you're met with hardships and roadblocks and you feel as though people are trying to keep you down, it's easy to say, well, I can't do this because of them, and they always do this and they do that, and the system this and all of those things. My mindset was, all right, if all these things seem to be working and conspiring against me, then what do I need to do to find a way to navigate this stuff, to get to where I'm trying to get to where I know I want to be. I know I want to be in the seat right here because I feel that I have the confidence in myself that I can do good there, that I can have a positive impact. I can drive change. I can be successful. I can do all of these things if I'm able to get there. And so I can't have any excuses, and I can't let any of these things, hold me back or keep me from achieving, my goals and things. And so for anybody out there that wants to drive change and wants to do change making work, or knows in their heart of hearts that they are an agent of change, start with you. It starts internally, and recognizing what you do well, what you don't do well, recognizing where your shortfalls are. I had to learn how to better connect with people because I wasn't always good at it. And there was a point in my career, early on in my career, where I rubbed people the wrong way too often. These were things that had to be pointed out to me, where I had to work on me. And I had to work on getting better, because it wasn't my intention to do those things, but that's how I was coming across. And so I can't just be dismissive of it and be like, well, that's not what I intend, so everybody just needs to get over it. Nah, I gotta work on me, and I gotta find ways to move differently and navigate things that will be better suited for the spaces that I'm in. And so it always starts with the individual. For me, it starts with the individual. And what are you pouring into yourself? And what are you working on within you to position yourself to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to come your way. Like, we're all faced with opportunities. The thing is, some of us are better prepared when those opportunities come our way than others are. Some of us have more confidence in ourselves when those opportunities come than some others do. And so if you don't have the confidence in yourself right now, then what do you need to do? What do you need to work on for yourself to help build up the confidence that you should have in yourself?
Thank you. Is there anything that I did not ask you, but you would like to communicate to the communities? People are listening us here across the US and South America, Central America, Europe, even Russia. We have people in Middle East, anywhere in the world. Our podcast is, I looked at the data. So, and I know that you have international presence as well. So if there is anything that you would like to send as a message to us.
The only thing I would close out with is, if you found value in what I'm talking about and what my story and what my journey has been, go to my website, jasonparmstrong.com, reach out to me, connect. I'm looking to expand more globally in the work that I'm doing. And so whatever country you may be in, I would love to come to your country and do some work there and speak or do whatever I can to support what's going on in communities around the globe.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you everybody who joined us. I do recommend to purchase the book. It's on Amazon. I purchased it on Amazon.
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can go to my website. You can order the book straight from my website. You can order autographed copies from my website. So, yeah, any of those places, you can pick up a copy of the book.
And we are going to post the link to Jason's website and any other social media platforms, including LinkedIn or anything else that you would find relevant. Is there any other places we can find you?
Yes, LinkedIn, jasonparmstrong.com, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Everything is Jason P. Armstrong. That's how you find me.
Yeah, just like here.
Yes.
Jason P. Armstrong, thank you for joining us for Connected Conversations. And the change does really start at home. It could be anybody. It could be any of your neighbors, family members, the way that it was in Jason's case. And let's start changing the world together for the positive impact. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for tuning in into Connected Conversation. We are incredibly inspired by the potential of positive change within our communities. We invite you to be a part of our conversation, and we invite you to be a part of our journey. Please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on our latest episodes. Your support is incredibly invaluable. It will help us to grow our community. We also encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments of each episode. Your feedback will help us to create even more meaningful conversations. We can inspire the change and connect with each other one conversation at a time.